Hey guys, you asked for it, so I am doing the Arnold Classic analysis. What an incredible show it was. Congratulations to the new champion, Laura Lee Chapados. Very happy to see her winning. You know, she's a good friend of mine, so congratulations to you, Laura Lee. I think that this show set a precedent for what's going to be happening this year, and there's going to be a lot of excitement this year at the Olympia. This show usually sets up, hey, what's going to happen? How's everything going to go down at the Olympia? What do we need to do to make improvements? Who needs to make improvements to pass who, whatever. There's always like something going on that kind of sets up the whole year for the Olympia. And historically, the champion of the Arnold has basically, for the last few years, been winning the Olympia. So is that going to happen again this year? You know, who knows? But it happened with Jennifer. It happened with Janet. And so, now Laura Lee's here, and she's been second at the Olympia twice. So is this her year, or is someone going to stop her? So some surprises in this one, because there is going to be a lot that happens at this year's Olympia. So let's go ahead and jump right into it and look at the athletes and go into analysis of how everything went down. So first off, this was the first call out, which was Maureen, Ashley, Issa, and Laura Lee, which is what pretty much everyone thought was going to be the first call out if there was only going to be a 4-person first call out. I was on the fence of if they were going to do a 4-person or a 6-person first call out, since there was 10 people. Basically the first call out would be 4, the second would be 6, or the first would be 6 and the second would be 4. So usual suspects, what everyone kind of predicted, the top 4 was going to be Ashley, Issa, Laura Lee, and Maureen. And what's cool about Bikini that you guys need to really look at and assess for yourself is that Bikini has a bunch of different shapes, a bunch of different heights, a bunch of different looks that all do well, and you can kind of go through each of them and see a dramatic difference between all of them. Some have more muscle, some are lower in body fat, some are a little bit fuller. It's just a totally different, physique for each person versus something like bodybuilding. As I always say, it's a lot easier to judge bodybuilding because it's the biggest, leanest, most symmetrical guy wins. And in Bikini, obviously, it's not just about muscle. It's not the biggest bikini competitor wins. It's not the biggest, leanest competitor wins. You could be too lean. You could be too soft. You could be, too muscular. There's like all these different parameters, and so what you're looking for. So a lot of different looks, and I want to go into each of these and kind of give my thoughts on it and go from here. So the different package that Maureen was bringing, Maureen brought a really full, really round, bubbly package. I would say in this top 4 group, her conditioning was probably the softest out of this top 4 group, but not soft in a bad way. It wasn't like too soft or anything like that. But if you just look at the differences of the physiques, in terms of total body, she really went for the fullness and roundness, and I think it worked really good for her. She seemed, the judges seemed to really like her full look, her round look, and that's what the thing with Bikini. And if you look at Laura Lee. Laura Lee used to come in a little softer too, and recently she's been getting leaner and leaner. And they seem to have found this happy medium for her. And the judges before, if you look back like years ago, they didn't really want her that lean. But she's found this perfect balance of right in the middle of, more evolved Bikini where it's a little bit leaner and still really full. And there's a difference between all these girls. So if you look at Ashley, she has more of an athletic look. I would say she is more athletic. She's got good muscle tone. But her whole thing is about balance. She's very, very balanced from head to toe, very tight conditioning. That's how the judges like her. They like her tight. They like her balanced. And she's really working to get her balance pretty much perfectly. And that's how Ashley is going to be making improvements for this year going into the Olympia. You're going to get her balance. We're going to get her balance even a little bit better than it is now. I think that the only thing that's really where she needs to make improvements at this point is going to be just a little bit in the shoulders, a little bit of arms. She talks about it all the time, and that's what's really going to have her perfectly balanced. And she's pretty close. It's pretty hard to see her balance being off at this point. Now with Maureen, how full is she going to go at the Olympia? Is she going to be tighter than this the next time? I don't think she really needs to. This package was an incredible package. I think this was a really good balance of balance, fullness, conditioning. I mean, maybe she'll come in a tiny bit tighter. I don't know what they're going to do at that camp, and we'll turn when we go to the back poses. You'll see a little bit more. Laura Lee really brought it. Now, Laura Lee isn't going to be the most balanced competitor in this lineup here. I think you would probably go with balance-wise. You'd probably have Ashley as first, Maureen as second, probably Laura Lee's third, and then Issa, or maybe Issa. They're pretty close in terms of their balance. But so why is it that Laura Lee does so good when her balance is probably, less than, let's say, Ashley or Maureen? Well, you got to understand bikini is not just one thing. It's not one dimension. It's multiple things, right? So Laura Lee has the wow factor, right? And that's a huge component in bikini that no one really talks about. It's that just the wow factor in general, her stage presence, her flow, her lines, her waist, everything on her structure. There's a lot of wow to it. And really her stage presence is, it's at that upper tier where there's really, I don't really think there's a better stage presence. I think there's like a level that you reach and that's like the best it could be. And she's pretty much there. I mean, there's not really anything you'd really change on her overall stage presence. Her posing is great. And she's actually evolved her posing too. If you look back at her previous, like earlier, I think it was Chicago. It was like her first show back. I could be wrong on the actual show, but it was like her first show back. She has really big glutes, that's when I say anything about balance on her, it's not a takeaway. That's something that on her physique is a little bit bigger than everything else and a little bit bigger than most people. She's got, crazy glutes. That's the wow factor of her. She does have crazy glutes and it doesn't hurt her, but she has to pose it right. And if you look back at her previous shows, like her first show when she came back, I wouldn't say come back, her first show last year, she was sitting in her hips a lot and the glutes look even more overpowering. The legs were actually bigger then too. So she's tapered down her legs. She's gotten her balance better. The balance of her legs and her upper body is pretty close now. It's still a little bit more in the legs, but it's not necessarily a bad thing if it's not overpowering and overwhelming and she's posing it right. Because from the back, you have that wow factor. Actually, from everywhere, you have that wow factor. So that's what pushes her over the top. So people ask me all the time about like different competitors and why is she winning and why is she doing this? And it's hard to explain in bikini, but a lot of it comes down to this, this wow factor, that is a component of it. The lines, the beauty flow, the waistline, the stage presence is huge, hair, makeup, complexion, everything. So it's not a body part thing. It's not like, she's got the best glutes, so she won, and that's why. It wasn't that. It was her total package is why she won. So, and when she comes out, you do look at her really strong, and that's where your eyes go to her and her stage presence. It's really great. So that's what you see, and that's why she's winning. When sometimes people don't understand why she's winning, they're like, she seems a little lower body heavy. Why would she win? Well, it's a whole thing, right? It's not just that. So a lot of things happen in this show that could have gone a different way as well. I mean, the cards for Laura Lee, she won with the perfect score on hers. So, that was it was her day. She wasn't going to be beaten that day. The judges loved her from A to Z. And, but a lot of things happened, like, for example, Issa. That was kind of a big story because Issa's incredible. Her physique is incredible, but she hasn't been the most consistent. You don't know what version of Issa is going to show up on show day. And she's always that threat. And I think sometimes people underestimate how good she actually is. Issa she was recently a Miss Olympia bikini champion. She beat Laura Lee and Jennifer at the Tampa Pro. She is still a crazy threat. It's just a matter of, is she going to show up 100% or is she not going to show up 100%? She's been kind of up and down, but I know that when you get a show this far in advance of the Olympia and you're this close, like if let's say, obviously we're in March now, if the Olympia was in June or July, there's not a lot of time to make improvements to your physique. But when we're talking December, there's a lot of time to make improvements to your physique. So I think that this is a good studying point for all the athletes and all the coaches out there, and for Issa to really bring it come the Olympia. Now, as we look in the back pose, this is where things get a lot more exposed. This is where a lot of things where it becomes a little bit more defined of who the winner is, right? So, if you have a trained eye, start training your eyes for these things, and look. And here's the thing about Issa, as we talk about Issa. One area of Issa that I think is overpowered in her, where she falls in this group here, is the tie-ins on Issa. Look at the crazy definition on Laura Lee's tie-ins. Look at the crazy definition on Ashley's tie-ins. look at Maureen. She's got long. Now remember, Maureen's bringing a fuller package. So she's about her thing is fullness, roundness, and balance. Okay. So she's got a great V taper. She's got a crazy small waist. Her glutes are super full. You know, it's really hard to bring a super, super tight look with a super, super full look. You know, you generally will pay for one of them. You know, it's hard to bring both. And she went with pushing the carbs. I don't know for sure she went with pushing the carbs, but it looks like to me like she went with pushing the carbs, filling out that frame, getting as round and as bubbly as possible, maybe sacrificing a tiny bit of conditioning for it to get that really poppy wow effect out of it, you know? And I would say she accomplished it. But look at the tie-ins. In terms of overall conditioning on the tie-ins, Laura Lee is definitely the sharpest. I mean, her tie-ins completely touch. I mean, they're completely all the way through at the bottom there. Ashley would be second here. Hers are very close to being completely defined. Maureen's, you see here, this little gap where it's not fully in all the way, right? At the bottom there, you can see it a little bit. And then you look at Issa, and Issa's are definitely out of the group, the less defined, right? The least defined. That is going to be the thing that she needs to bring out come Olympia time to be able to kind of take her throne back, right? In my opinion. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the judges think something different from her. But for me, it seems pretty obvious of where she's getting beat in this grouping here, if you're looking at the glutes. Now, in terms of hamstring development and roundness to everyone, they're all pretty even. You know, Ashley has some really, really good hamstrings. That's probably her strongest body part is her hamstrings, you know, if you're looking at that. But you see how she has the roundness to her hamstrings without any separation and detail? That's what you want in bikini. You want to have full hamstrings, round hamstrings, and Maureen has really good, really round hamstrings too, without the separation and detail. So Laura Lee too. With Issa, she has good round hamstrings, but there's a little bit of detail in them. You see how it's separating, that line here separating? So, you know, she's right at that limit of conditioning on the hamstrings. So I don't think that this is a conditioning and why her glutes aren't fully in like a Laura Lee's are. Because in terms of conditioning on the hamstring, she probably has the most separation, right? So that would usually mean the most tie-in showing in detail on that lower glute. So what I think it is, I think it's development. I think that she needs to develop this lower tie-in just a little bit more. And when you look at her from front to back, that's probably the only part when you turn them around where she's, you know, losing points. Everywhere else, she's still Issa. She's still amazing. So I think that what's happened is over the years, the bikini class has evolved. It's gotten more muscular. You know, if you look back at Ashley, when just a few years ago, her glutes weren't like this. Her tie-ins weren't like that. She's had to evolve with the sport. You know, if you look at even Laura Lee a few years ago, her tie-ins weren't this defined. You know, so the sport has gotten, you know, more defined in the tie-ins in bikini. I don't think the muscle has really changed too much anywhere else, but the tie-ins really become a thing. So, I mean, we're talking pro-level bikini. You're going to need some tie-ins here on those glutes to win. It's just the way it is now. I mean, look at this. This is your current champion, this tie-in. I'm going to pull this up a little closer if I can and show you guys up close because I don't think people really understand. This is the standard now, okay? So this is the current Miss Bikini International, okay? So tie-ins are going to be a thing. They're going to be necessary. That's the current highest, you know, placing out of a show other than the Olympia. So this is kind of, you know, if they're picking this over picking this, that's what we're going with. That's the standard, right? So just something you always got to pay attention to. Who's winning? How are they winning? What's the look of the champions? What suits are they wearing? How are they wearing their hair? Look at these things if you're trying to excel yourself as a bikini competitor and try to match the conditioning, the hair, the suit, the makeup, the posing, all that, because that's going to be where you get the standards from. And so especially when you do these big shows. So the Olympia, the Arnold, those two set the tone for the whole year. They set it like, hey, what's the current trend? Is posing changing? Whatever. And that's how, you know, you can kind of assess bikini and assess what it is that you need to do to make the changes to get to the level that you want to get to. But yeah, the tie-ins are crazy. You know, the fullness, the balance is there. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of ways to prepare like each girl differently. You know, as example, like as I said, you know, Laura Lee has a lot of wow factor to her. You know, Ashley is about balance and conditioning. Maureen is more full. Ashley is more athletic. She's more bouncy when she poses. Laura Lee's more of that, kind of a more of a, I guess you'd say like a sexy poser. Everyone has their thing. So you got to find one, what works for you. You got to look at the standard and you got to make adjustments based on where you're at and where you want to be. So as the show went on, the last picture I showed you was the original first call out. Basically everyone came out. Ashley was in the middle. Issa was in the middle at first on the original call out. That was just the order. So it was a Maureen outside, Ashley, Issa, Laura Lee. Then they moved Laura Lee in, and then they kept Ashley there. They walked him to the back and walked him to the front. And then they moved Maureen in on Ashley. They turned him again back and forth. They walked him to the back, walked him to the front again, and then they moved Ashley in on Maureen. So there was a lot of back and forth on Ashley and Maureen. That was definitely I think honestly that was where the contest was. Laura Lee won with a perfect score. So the contest ended up coming down to who's going to be second. And there was a lot of flip-flopping on Ashley or Maureen, a couple of different looks. And I think there's a couple of things that Ashley could have done a little bit differently. And she talked about it on her podcast, on the podcast too. And you could see here in this pose where they switched her back, she really opened up on this front pose, which is, I'm happy that, Ashley talks about these things openly. And, she turned and kind of exposed her waistline too much. Not that she has a big waist, but comparatively where everyone else was kind of sideways in profile, she really turned just a little bit too much. She's like, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what I was doing. And that's one of the reasons that Ashley competes a lot, is because she'll never make that mistake twice. That's the thing. Every year she's going to make mistakes. It's just the way it is, especially when you're competing as often as she is. You're going to make a mistake here and there, but she competes a lot. So that's the way she remembers, okay, what did I do this show? What did I do that show? Where are my mistakes that I made? How can I get better? And so unfortunately, this was at a big show. Did it affect the score? Who knows? But at that point, they were moving them back and forth a lot. And, she, in this position, actually, I think Issa probably has the smallest waist here out of everyone. And then probably Ashley would probably be next. I don't know. Maureen's pretty petite, so maybe her. But because of the way she's posing, her waist will look the biggest here, right? But it's all posing. And that's what's the thing about posing, is you really got to master it, because you don't want to show a wide waistline, especially when you got a smaller waistline, right? So that's going to go down to everyone. So you practicing posing, you guys should be practicing your posing all the time. If you're getting ready for a show, you should be practicing your posing at least a few times a week after you do your workout. When you're within the last 4 weeks of your show, you should be practicing your posing pretty much every day after your workout, and give yourself that extra time. Look at your angles, record yourself on camera, replay it on camera, look at your angle. It's a whole thing, right? So now I will say Ashley poses all the time, and this is just a mistake. She's posing, she teaches posing class here on Saturdays with me. So just a little thing, and everyone could do just a tiny bit different with their posing. But honestly, this is some darn good posing. And some of the things I was seeing with Issa earlier this year, when she was getting ready for this, I thought she was going to be doing something different with her posing, but she actually is killing her posing. The only thing I'll say, which is funny, about Issa is when she poses here in this front pose, I do think it makes her lower body just look a little bit dominant, because she's got a strong arch to her hips here. And so if you look at the overall, when you're looking at balance, right, we're talking about balance here. To me, my eye goes right to her glutes and thigh right here. So to me, it looks a little bit overpowering to her upper body. I don't know if that hurt her so much or not, but that's where my eye goes. And this is just my opinion, of course. Now, when I look at Laura Lee, we already know that she does have, and she'll probably say this too, she has a little bit more powerful legs and glutes than her upper body, which is her plus, right? It's a huge plus, and it's also a minus if you do it the wrong way. But how she's posing, and how she has her hips tucked back a little bit where you can't fully see them, versus sitting in them and showing full profile. If she sat full profile on her glutes and then sat into them, her glutes would look really overpowering. But the way that she's kind of have her hips pushed a little bit back, where she's not fully arched, where she could be probably more than that, she's not looking so overpowering in that front pose. And that's the thing about bikini. You gotta show your strengths when it's time and hide them when it's taking away from your physique, right? So a lot of this comes down to posing too. And I don't want to take anything away from Maureen and say that was a reason or anything like that. Maureen actually could have had the best posing day of her life and still might have lost to Maureen. Maureen looked incredible that day. So, but this is a cool breakdown of seeing just different physiques, and I really like I really like what everyone brought to the table. I'm really happy to see Laura Lee's conditioning here. It's a really good balance of, being tight but not being too tight for how they used to like her a little softer. It's a really good balance. It's full. She did a good job with that. I think that Issa can fine tune, and it just needs a little bit more in that tie-in development. I don't think she needs more glute development in this front. I mean, look at her profile on this. Her glutes are really good. It's just that tie-in area needs to be a little bit more defined. She has more than enough time to get ready for the Olympia. And then with Ashley, she's going to have a little bit fuller shoulders and arms. The division is getting a little bit fuller. She's got 8 months to do it. I know that she will. And that really there wasn't much here that she needed to change. I think that it was just a little bit fuller physique. And honestly, even if she was fuller, who knows how the scoring would have went. I think Maureen nailed it. I don't know if there's really anything she needs to change at this point. She's going to hear back from the judges and kind of go from there. I've heard back from the judges on Ashley, and they've told me, like, hey, she looks incredible. You don't need to do much. She can win the Olympia with that physique right there. There's not a whole bunch. So don't go ahead and revamp everything and think you need to go back to the drawing board. She can win with that physique right there. So that's really cool feedback. So that's how the top 4 went down. And then we got to the second call out here. And the second call out was, I mean, honestly, these girls are so damn good. All of them are crazy good. This is out of these girls. I'm pretty sure that out of these top 10, I mean, I would be surprised if any of these top 10 girls didn't hit top 15 this year at the Olympia. If they all nail their conditioning, of course. This is how good that show was. It was crazy good. I mean, crazy good. So yeah, I'd be surprised if any of these girls didn't hit in that top 15. So as the show went on, they did the second call out, and the second call out is basically the winner of any other show. If any of these girls did any other show, they're basically like top 2. So incredible show. Everyone looked really awesome. And so as they went on, they moved everyone a little bit. I'll go through these pictures here so you can see how the call-outs kind of went. But, at first they moved everyone around Phoebe. They turned them around, and then they moved Phoebe out. Lucia got in there, and then eventually Jourdain got moved in, and it was after the back poses where it happened. So I think that when we look at everyone, we look at that second call-out, look at these tie-ins on everyone. Incredible tie-ins. The level of conditioning that is there these days is in that tie-in is nuts. And it's the same thing. When you look at the girls who are placing higher, right? Look at how deep that tie-in is. Here's Jourdain's 5th. Alessia is 6th. Look at those tie-ins, right? So, and you're seeing these tie-ins without crazy adductors. That's the other thing. A lot of people are training their adductors and getting these adductors really thick, but they're not on these top 15 girls, which I think they're going to be top 15 at the Olympia. You're not seeing these crazy poppy adductors like you see in like the wellness division. You're not seeing a whole lot of it. So, pay attention to that too when you're training your body parts. If you're doing an exercise that really feels like you're getting a lot of adductors, none of the top girls have that. So that's something that you're going to need to replicate. So this is basically how they kept moving them around. A couple people I think, could have made a little bit of improvements here and there, but honestly, these physiques were so good. It was really just the level of competition. And it came down to a lot of different things, stage presence, structure, just genetic structure and things like that. So when they moved them around, just a couple of things that I saw, I thought Phoebe was going to hold down that spot. I think Phoebe just in the glutes could have been a little bit tighter comparatively. When you look at these girls, it could have been a little bit tighter. I think that Allison could have been a little bit softer. I think she went a little too far with her conditioning, and that's what hurt her. Because when she was posting pictures online, she was the talk of the town. Everyone's like, maybe she can win this show. But when she was walking and doing the walks, you could see striations in the glutes, and that's really where she got exposed is when the walking happened. You could just see how tight she was, and that's an easy fix. Get a little softer, and that's it. You're good to go. It's really not a hard fix. Her physique is there. Her waistline's there. Her ratios are crazy. She just got a little bit too hard. And, I don't know what her story was on how she was filling out, but, it was just a little bit too tight. And so when you look at these competitors, it's going to give you a good insight of what's going to come this year at the Olympia, but watch all these girls. They have enough time. They've competed against the best girls. They know where they stand against them. They know what they need to work on. another story too would be Lauren. Lauren is like right now. Here's the crazy thing about Lauren. She got top 10 in the world last year, but out of all these competitors that are in that top 10 or in this top list, she's probably the least developed. And that's not a knock to her. She says it on her own blog. She's a friend of mine, and that's not a knock to her at all. What I want you to think about is the potential there. That's what's crazy about Lauren. Lauren is top 10 in the world, and she's not fully developed. The rest of these girls, for the most part, are at the limit of how much muscle they can have, right? So you have someone placing top 10 in the world who still has room to improve her physique where she can put on more muscle. Like, think about that for a second. Like, where will she end up when she's fully maxed out? It's kind of crazy to think about, right? You imagine that in any other sport, like you're top 10 in the world in any other sport. So let's say you're top 10 in the world in bodybuilding, right? Let's say bodybuilding, right? And you're not even like maybe 80% of your max of how much muscle you can have at that point. Like, think about the potential of how fast you can climb with that. Any other sport, like you're playing professional baseball, but you're only 80% at your best at that point. I mean, that's a crazy thing to think about. So in terms of potential in this lineup of people to really climb, I think Lauren has the biggest opportunity to really make a mark, 8 months from now in the Olympia. She's got to get qualified this year if she's going to do that. I know she's been talking about potentially taking a whole year to build. I don't know what she's going to do over at her camp, but that's someone you're going to want to keep an eye on. Now, the other thing, too, that you got to keep an eye on is going to be Phoebe at the Olympia. I think Phoebe could have gotten 5th place at this show if she was just a little bit tighter. And obviously, I'm Phoebe's coach, and she really grinded to get this prep down. It was one of those things where she wasn't sure if she was going to get to the Arnold, and then she found out she had 11 weeks. She prepped in 11 weeks and just needed probably like 2 weeks. And these are all girls that she has actually, beaten before. So I think come Olympia time, you can watch Phoebe get into that top 10 as well and potentially take out a lot of the names that beat her at the Arnold. I'm actually pretty confident in that, to be honest. So with the proper time, a good off season, which she's really, she's actually just left from the U.S. today, and she's already on her reverse diet and she's, really honing it in. I think that she's going to be another one to really watch. So really, really exciting. Arnold, I think it's going to give us a lot of insight as to what's going to happen this year come Olympia time. But one of the cool stories that happened that I think a lot of people are forgetting about is that we have ourselves some crazy competition coming to the Olympia this year. Now, I think everyone thinks that Janet retired, but Janet never retired. She just said she wasn't doing the Olympia. So I don't know where everyone got this whole Janet's retired thing. She didn't do the Olympia and then promoted a show and everyone's like, oh, she's done. And I'm like, I don't know where this came from. She never said that, So the word on the street is, and from everyone was talking about it, is Janet is going to be coming back. So now we have probably the craziest Olympia. I think that I've ever seen. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there's been a crazier Olympia than this. So let's break it down for a second. Okay. You have Janet coming back to the Olympia, most likely. Now let her make that, but that's most likely happening. Okay. Janet didn't lose the Olympia title. She just didn't compete. She wasn't dethroned. She just didn't compete, right? So she didn't lose it. Jennifer, current champion, most likely won't compete until the Olympia. I don't know for sure. You have the most winning bikini pro of all time, the most winning Olympia bikini champion of all time, Ashley, doing the Olympia. You have Issa, who's beaten Jennifer and Laura Lee last year at the Tampa. What shape will she show up in? Will she be at her best? Will her tie-ins be there? Will she be the Issa that destroys everyone and there's just no touching her? Also a Miss Olympia champion. And you have Laura Lee, who just won the Arnold and has that momentum, who's been Olympia runner-up twice with a ton of momentum. New camp, new everything, and is bringing a package that we've never seen from her before, and the judges like it. That's another scary thing. You got to remember, when you change your package, the judges still have to like it, but they loved it. Perfect score. That's what's happening at the Olympia, okay? That's crazy. 4 Olympia champions, one coming back who's never lost. Laura Lee, who's been second twice, who's bringing a new improved package that the judges seem to love. I mean, I don't know if the story gets any better than that. That's most likely, you know, as of now, you have that's probably going to be the top 5 girls, right? But then you also have Maureen, who got, she got 4th at the Olympia last year. And so you have her making improvements, making pretty decent improvements. She's fuller, rounder. The judges seem to like that too, right? What's going to happen this year at the Olympia? That first call out is going to be a crazy, crazy first call out. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was those 6 girls. We have a lot of year to go still to see what's going to happen and what's going to rise. But the Arnold kind of sets a precedence for what's to happen this year. I got to admit, I'm actually this Olympia, I'm over the moon for. I'm super excited. We got a lot of time to make improvements with Ashley. We don't need very many improvements from the judges' mouth themselves. It's in Las Vegas, so that's where I live. So I'm super stoked for it to be back in Las Vegas. You have most likely, you know, let Janet make that call, but I think most likely Janet's coming back. Jennifer defending, another Las Vegas resident. I mean, this is a crazy story. This is a crazy Olympia. Like, get your tickets now for that if you can. I don't think they're available now, but honestly, get them right away because you're probably never going to see an Olympia this crazy again. It is a crazy, crazy Olympia. I don't know what's going to happen. So this is going to be one Olympia where if I do the pre-show, the pre-game analysis on it, I don't know. I have no idea who would be even top 3 there. You can change any of those 6 girls I mentioned around to be the champion, and you can make an argument for each of them. So what a year we got ahead of us. So I'm super excited about it. So that's my quick analysis on the Arnold breakdown. I know a few of you have been asking for it. Yeah, I'll be doing these here and there at the bigger shows. You know, this weekend we have another cool show. We have the Boston Pro coming up, which is basically a rematch between Maureen and Issa. I don't know how that's going to go down this time. You have Anya doing that show too, which is cool. We don't know how good she's going to be yet. She hasn't competed for a while and made some big improvements. So this is going to be a really exciting year. I'm super excited about it. So anyway, thank you guys so much. Keep those questions coming in. You can shoot me a text about any of the shows, any of the competitors, questions about bikini, whatever. And I'll leave my number in the description here. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you later.